Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today, we will be contrasting the opposing results of the annual Southern Baptist Convention of 2022 with the General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church in America. So, both these events happened about a week apart in June, and the results of these could not be more opposing in their direction and trajectory as far as each denomination's uh, respective trajectory is. The Southern Baptist Convention is on a very negative trajectory. The PCA is not as positive because it's a much slower moving entity, but it is nonetheless on a more positive trajectory in my own opinion. So, first, I'm going to recap the SBC, then we'll recap the PCA, and then, I'll have some video clips to show you, and then obviously I'll wrap up with my own concluding thoughts. But you should like the video and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Early likes really help with the magical YouTube algorithms. That being said, SBC 2022, what happened? Bart Barber was elected president of the SBC. So that was the first major event. Other than Vodi Bakum not being elected president of the Pastors Conference, but this vote for Vodi Bakum would be the high watermark of the Conservative Baptist Network. Now, this video is not about the Conservative Baptist Network. I will do an entirely separate video on the Conservative Baptist Network because I have a lot more to say about that group in particular. But this video is going to focus on the trajectory of the SBC and juxtapose that with the trajectory of the PCA. So Bart Barber was elected president. Rick Warren was not kicked out of the SBC, and his church, Saddleback Church, is allowed to remain, despite the fact that they hired an openly egalitarian pastor to be their replacement for Rick Warren. So Rick Warren not only got to stay in the SBC, but he got a long time at the microphone to bloviate about his accomplishments in the most me-centric speech I've ever listened to on the SBC floor. Other events include a slate of resolutions that were seemingly more tame, but obviously the Southern Baptist Convention would adopt the feminist narrative and Me Too narrative as it relates to the issue of sex abuse. It's not that sex abuse isn't an issue, but the way that the Southern Baptist Convention handled the issue was not only opposed to SBC and Baptist polity, but it was also in sharp contrast to, in my opinion, with what Scripture says about how we should handle the issue. So there are a lot of issues there. I've done a number of videos on the Sex Abuse Task Force report, specifically as it relates to naming people as victims who didn't actually suffer any sex abuse, let alone their people like Jennifer Lyle, who were arguably more in power than the person that she was having a consensual sexual relationship with for 12 years. But I digress. So the SBC definitely went Me Too, but I would also say that the SBC went more pragmatic in their approach. And I mean to say that they've adopted pragmatism. And this is, Rick Warren being a highlight of pragmatism, being the poster child for pragmatic style of church and pragmatic ecclesiology in the United States. For him to be a keynote speaker, and I use that term facetiously, at the annual meeting is quite indicative of the trajectory of the SBC. So I would actually say that, because Bart Barber might not be a liberal, but he is a pragmatist. This guy is an inside player. This guy is a company man. Who else is going to say that serially plagiarizing sermons isn't condemned in the Bible? Who else is going to say that? Bart Barber will. So Bart Barber is a company man. He's been in the chains for a long time. He's been climbing up the ladder. My pal Bobby Lopez really doesn't like Bart Barber, and because he's had some dealings with him, because Bart Barber came from the ARLC, pretty negative and shady entity. If you know anything about the Southern Baptist Convention, the ERLC is where the liberalism became most evident and most open. And it is, widely considered, might not actually be the case, but it is widely considered to be the start of the downward fall of the SBC. So, Bart Barber became president, and he, I think, will take the SBC in a more pragmatist direction. That is why he's working with Rick Warren. That's why he's not as liberal as Ed Litton, because I think Ed Litton was pretty overtly woke, but Bart Barber's still not great on the issues like race and critical race theory. He's not great on the issues, in my opinion, on sex abuse in the church. And I don't think he's great on the issue of abortion, given his resume with the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. So I don't think he has a great resume on key issues, in my opinion. And juxtapose that with Tom Askell, who I think is actually pretty solid on the issues. Again, my issue with Tom Askell is he's too political for his own good. He's very much like, not 2022 Ted Cruz, but 2018 Ted Cruz, maybe 2019, 2020 Ted Cruz, 2019 at the latest. But that's kind of my opinion of Tom Askell. Great leader on the fight when he's in the fight, but he's so political. And we're going to watch a clip of him later in this video. Anything else? Oh, yes. In the Southern Baptist Convention annual messengers, we're told that they cannot make a motion to direct an entity to take any action, which just basically tells the messengers that they have no power in the SBC. So Southern Baptist polity is largely dead. And it's largely dead because the SBC messengers don't have any power. So the national polity of the SBC does not in any way, in my assessment, correlate to the polity of a Baptist church, a more congregationalist polity that a Baptist church should, keyword should have, doesn't mean they always do, but an SBC church should have a congregationalist polity. But the annual Southern Baptist Convention clearly does not have a Baptist or congregationalist polity. Lastly, I want to talk about how the SBC went to the left on the issue of abortion. And this is because they've adopted very feminist premises on abortion. Brent Leatherwood's up on the stage saying that he does not believe in equal protection under the law, meaning that if a woman kills her own child, which is demonic, by the way, she should not receive punishment for that. Despite the fact that, again, if we look at the statistics, there's not an abortionist in many, if not close to majority of abortions that are taking place in the United States. There's not a traditional abortionist in the imagery that we imagine. So, with that said, the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission is really dropping the ball on ethics, as well as religious liberty, which they dropped the ball on all of 2020 and 2021. But, if a Muslim wants to build a mosque, the ERLC is right on the case. So those are your highlights from the annual Southern Baptist Convention of 2022. The PCA is a little bit of a different story. It's not like wins out the wazoo, but some key victories that took place at the PCA was that the PCA voted to leave the National Association of Evangelicals, NAE. This is a very liberal organization, very big EVA liberal organization. They are definitely compromised in terms of their funding. Ironically, the PCA is one of the largest denominations in said NAE organization, and they also contribute the president of the NAE. The president of the NAE, who is woke and liberal, by the way, is also PCA. This this organization, this ecumenical organization, does seek to make bold stances on issues, and on the issues they usually get it all wrong. They're very pro jabbing, they're very pro illegal immigration, they're very pro climate change stuff. And again, I think they're wrong on pretty much every issue. So it's not a surprise that conservatives in the PCA would want to leave. They've tried before to leave this organization, but now this time they succeeded. Additionally, the PCA took a strong stance against homosexuality again. But wait, didn't they already do that? Well, I already covered this in 2 videos, I believe. We had Overture, I believe it was 29, and Overture 15. Both tackled the issue of homosexuality. Both passed and get to go back to the presbyteries. And then if they pass that stage, they go back to next year's annual General Assembly. And Overture 15 was a pretty dynamic vote. It narrowly passed by 54%, which makes it a long shot to pass the next stage, but it was a victory because you just defeated the Revoice movement once again on the national stage. That's got to be a demoralizing defeat. People like Nate Collins certainly think so. So, and he's not PCA, I don't think. But nonetheless, the Revoice crowd is not too happy about that. There were some setbacks. The PCA was not able to pass a overture on secretive groups, which was really about the National Partnership, which is a PCA group that wants to infiltrate and kind of dominate and change the direction in a liberal way of the General Assembly and the presbyteries. So that was a little bit of a setback. There was another overture on critical race theory, which probably should have been allowed and adopted. That could have been a win, but we certainly were not losing too badly in the PCA. In fact, I would say this was a net win. So let's see how the SBC is reacting. And I mean the conservatives, the actual Christians in the Southern Baptist Convention are reacting to their losses. And then we'll compare that with how some of the Christians in the PCA are celebrating their wins. So the post game, and for the post game of the SBC, we're going to go to Tom Askell of Founders Ministries. As you know, or may not know, Tom Askell was the conservative choice for president of the Southern Baptist Convention. He was the Conservative Baptist Network nominee, and he got crushed. His vote was not close. So let's listen to him try to explain how consequential the vote was.
Message me on Facebook. I never check it. I don't do that. And so I'll find things 5 years, some of them 10 years old, people saying, hey, well, okay, that ship's passed, but I appreciate the effort to communicate. I just don't pay attention to Messenger. But I was going through stuff last night, and I found an exchange of messages that he and I had back in 2018 before the convention. And I was actually encouraging him to run for president in 2018. I said, I will back you if you run for president in 2018, because the options at that point were J.D. Greer and Ken Hemphill, I think maybe had announced. I'm not sure. But anyway, the writing on the wall for me as I was looking at the landscape back then was, man, would love to have Bart. He would be a better option than what we wound up with in 2018. So that was funny.
And I think that he still will be a better option than
no
Greer and Litton.
Absolutely.
I think I told him, I think he's a man of integrity, and I think that's what the convention needs right now, although we don't see things the same way. And,
right.
But continue to pray for him.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Lord can use him in this office.
Yeah, I do pray for him. My wife and I got to know him and Tracy and Robin and Kathy Hadaway through the event in Keller, Texas, where they had a little panel for all of the candidates at that time. And it was just wonderful, just having fellowship with them. And I'd never met Robin and Kathy, and so that was neat. We had some common connections and relationships, so that was really fun to we've been following up on that and communicating with each other. But I've known Bart for years. I don't know that I ever met Tracy before. But again, you just realize, okay, these are real people. He's a faithful Southern Baptist pastor. He's been at his church a long time. He's trying to do a faithful job shepherding God's people, and so he deserves our prayers. And so Don and I have been praying for them ever since we had that time with them, and it's been a wonderful thing for us to pray about. I'd encourage everyone to pray for Bart. He's got a lot of responsibilities and opportunities, and he's going to need wisdom from on high, and he's going to need God's Spirit to guide him and to protect him and help him, and also to carry on his regular responsibilities as a pastor. So it's a right thing to pray for him.
Yeah, and one other high point of the convention that I didn't mention, and I think is a good...
One other high point of the convention, which kind of indicates that they think that this was a high point in the convention. So, obviously, I think it's odd that in 2018, Tom Askell was trying to tap Bart Barber to run for president. I think that was rather odd. And largely because, Bart Barber is part of the ERLC. That's part of his resume. It's not... And, he would later on be one of the people that would, be behind Bobby Lopez's firing in some capacity. So, kind of odd to tap him for president, but it just does not raise any sort of confidence in the movement to say that, oh, he's going to be a good president. So was there no consequence? Is there no leftist drift? Is there a leftist drift or is there not? And it doesn't seem like Tom Askell's actually really putting up a fight. I mean, his campaign was basically, let's try and out-nice Bart Barber. Like, they were just trying to out-nice each other. There was no fight there. Like, they didn't fight for the SBC. They didn't fight for the meeting. They didn't fight for anything. So, I just want that to be clear that the Conservative Baptist Network, and I will talk about this in a different video, but Tom Askell specifically didn't really fight. And they lost. They lost bigly. And there's really no hope of trying to win, because in order to win, you would need a much different turnout model. You need a much different turnout model. It's going to be more expensive. It's going to be cheaper next year. But by more expensive, I mean collectively, you'd basically need a bunch of churches. You need like at least 500 more messengers. In this case, perhaps more, depending on where the meeting is held. You need a lot more messengers than the people that showed up in Anaheim. And how many people just spent irresponsible amounts of money to attend that meeting? How many churches spent irresponsible amounts of money to attend that meeting that could have gone towards real missions, not the North American Mission Board, but real missions? But instead they spent it on sending their pastor to an annual meeting to get wined and dined, and then he would probably also get caught in the liberal drift and vote on bad motions and stuff like that. So, the SBC isn't learning. It's been 2 years of them being awake to the issues. They still have not learned. And that's frustrating to watch. Bart Barber is going to be a bad president, because he's going to take it in a more pragmatic direction. Because I think enough people know that overt liberalism will kill the convention, but pragmatism will keep the trains running on time. So we're going to switch over to some of that post game for the PCA, and I want to highlight John Harris had 2 PCA people on after the PCA General Assembly, and it was a pretty good watch. I recommend watching this. I also recommend watching the Russell Fuller and Tom Rush kind of debate back and forth with John moderating the trajectory of the SBC. And I'll bring up the fact that Russell Fuller, who's blackpilled on the SBC, talked about how they could not get at a state convention level the issue of plagiarism condemned. So he was using that to point out the blackpill, and we'll juxtapose this with what Sean McGowan says, and I just love the comments. This this comment stuck out to me the most.
Overall, there's a good trajectory, and I think we need to take the fight to the presbyteries and make the case for Overture 29 and Overture 15, and make the case the best we can. But I think overall there's a good trajectory going. We're not the SBC, brother.
Yeah, and that's good.
So he dropped a sick burn on the SBC, and he's right. They actually have a much simpler, or maybe not simpler, but they have a much easier, let's just say easier and cheaper solution to get these overtures passed. They already have the General Assembly majority. They have a majority at the General Assembly. So on the national level, the Christians control the General Assembly of the PCA. The Christians control the General Assembly. On the state presbytery level, they do not have a super majority threshold necessary to crack down on the I don't want to say infidels, but on the wolves in their midst. They don't have a supermajority of the presbyteries. But in order to get said supermajority, you got to get churches, more elders showing up at the state level presbyteries. And that is a much, in my opinion, that is a much easier task, is to get higher turnout in these, I think there's 87 presbyteries, higher turnout in all these presbyteries than it is for the Southern Baptist Convention to get higher turnout at an annual meeting. So it is clear the difference in the trajectories of the convention. The PCA is a much easier task, and I think they can get motivated because, again, PCA is a more secretive, and I love the way they do their convention. They actually know how to have a meeting with thousands of people in it. The SBC does not. The SBC should be getting those remote voter things. Like, there's no reason why it should take hours to count their election results. They should just know it right there. And I get there's concerns about machine voting, but you don't have those same concerns about SBC. Bobby Lopez still thinks that the voting is rigged. I don't think that the voting was rigged in the past SBC convention. Like, you don't accidentally get 34% trying to cheat. Like, you don't accidentally get the same cheat and get the same results. So, that being said, way different trajectory. The PCA is on a positive trajectory. Don't leave the PCA just yet, unless you're, again, I guess you really want to. But the SBC, there's no reason to stay in the Southern Baptist Convention. All these resources could be put towards building up a conservative denomination. And if all the Christians just left the SBC, the House of Cards would collapse. The credibility of the Southern Baptist seminaries would collapse with it. And the House of Cards of NAM would implode. They won't last. And we could build up something better in a very short amount of time, in a much shorter amount of time than it would take to take over the institutions. The first conservative resurgence took over 10 years. And that was to succeed. That was in 10 years of repeated success. It had like 15 plus years of failure. The SBC can't afford 15 plus years of failure. And who knows how many plus years of failure they've already sustained with no end in sight. No realistic end in sight. The turnout models are not favorable to overturning the current trajectory of the SBC. And I would also say that the messengers are not savvy enough to overturn the current trajectory of the SBC. But the PCA, they're smarter. They just are. They dress better. They worship better. The PCAGA is a collectively smarter group. And again, I'm not Presbyterian. I'm more Baptist in my theology, but still. Mad respect. So anyway, that's really all I got to say about this for now. If you like this kind of video, subscribe to the Evangelical Dark Web. Also check out evangelicaldarkweb.org, linked in the description below. And if you really like this kind of content, we have a Patreon-like system over at evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. Join us for as little as $5 a month to support the Evangelical Dark Web in its efforts to be the future of Christian news. Have a blessed day. Let me know what you think about what I think in the comment section below, and I will catch you on the next one.